What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Gerald here with your weather forecast on this Friday, and we've got a lot to talk about today, from the tropics to more of the tropics to a monsoon to a drought. So a whole lot of everything, and all of that unfortunately topped off with a big old heat wave in store for millions of Americans. So a lot to discuss and a lot to get to. Now, before we get to that, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. And if you like the video, definitely hit that like button for me. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. It means the world to me. With all that said, I don't really want to drag on this intro too long because, again, it is Friday, so I'm sure you don't want to, listen to me talk for too long here. So let's go ahead and jump right into that forecast. So right now, looking kind of at a bit of everything here, from the entire lower 48 to the tropics on kind of really both sides of the country. A couple key things to note here. One, this really nice cold front is sweeping on through the northeast right now, and behind that, we're going to have some really comfortable air for the next couple of days, and you're really going to want to get out there and enjoy it because it will not last long. That's one story. That's kind of the big story close to home. Now, in terms of zooming out a little bit and looking at the other big stories, we obviously have Hurricane Hilary out here in the Pacific, which is making a beeline towards California currently, which is not something I had on my bingo card for 2023, but, here we are, so definitely have to watch out for that. And then we also have other areas out here in the Atlantic, and another one that's even further off the map here that we need to look out for. So, again, a lot going on out there, a lot to kind of analyze here on satellite, and a lot to break down in this video. So that's satellite imagery. If we kind of zoom back in home a little bit and look at what we're dealing with currently here at home in terms of our active alerts and radar, you'll notice in terms of radar imagery, we're pretty dry out there outside of the area of rain moving through the northeast, as well as back down towards Florida. Now, again, all of this is because of this big sweeping cold front that is just having some showers kind of spawning there on certain sides of it. So we'll go ahead and zoom into the northeast here, take a look at that rain that's falling from Boston up towards Concord, New Hampshire, and even up towards the Canadian border. So we have had some strong storms this morning. In fact, we have had a severe thunderstorm even move through Boston within the past couple of hours. Now, don't let your guard down, because we're likely going to get round 2 this afternoon. As you can already see that moving through New York. That is from the cold front itself. This stuff in front was kind of just, I guess a precursor to the bigger threat this afternoon, which could have some strong winds as well as a couple embedded tornadoes also possible there with that. Now, in terms of our watches, warnings, advisories, and all the good stuff there, we do have an air quality alert up for much of Minnesota and just about, it looks like, the entire state of Wisconsin. This is due to that Canadian wildfire smoke that unfortunately is going to spill back into the lower 48 over the next week, all thanks to this massive heat dome. And then we also have, some wildfire risks out here towards Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, all of that. Unfortunately, once again, due to this massive heat dome that is on the way, that is going to keep things really dry and very hot over the central part of the country and even much of the East Coast over the next week. And then, of course, outside of there, we do have some excessive heat warnings as well as heat advisories for the southern plains, and those even extend up towards the Canadian border, up towards North Dakota. And then, of course, all due to Hilary on the way, we do have some flash flood watches up for the desert southwest, and those are going to be very important to have, because when Hilary makes an arrival, unfortunately, she's not going to be very happy, and we'll talk about that here later on in the video. Alright, so taking a look at today's kind of severe weather outlook, really the main area I'd be concerned with is up here towards New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and sections of Connecticut there. Again, all that due to that cold front swinging on through, and the main threat will be damaging winds, but don't rule out an isolated tornado. Alright, so let's go ahead and run you through this future radar over the next 2 days or so and show you what we're going to be looking at. Again, expect that rain to move on through the northeast as well as lingering through Florida this afternoon, but by the time we get to this evening, things should begin to clear out. Can't rule out a couple stray showers in the northeast, but things really clear out and should stay pretty clear through the next 48 hours, again outside of a couple showers in the northeast and Florida. But for everyone else, you'll notice bone dry as I move this all the way out to Sunday morning. So again, a very dry period is in store for a lot of us here. Now, the one good news to kind of add on top of this dry weather, at least in the near term, is the dew points. Now, this will have a bit of a 1-2 punch. Unfortunately, this is going to make it easier for wildfires to start. That's the bad news. The good news to it is it will definitely feel nicer out there. So looking at this evening, you see that cooler air there in those greens and blues really spilling in to the northeast, mid-Atlantic, and the Ohio River Valley. So it's going to feel really nice tonight. I'd get out there, maybe sit on the porch, have a campfire if that's your sort of thing, and just definitely get out there and enjoy that nicer weather, because it won't last forever, as next week really brings a real 180 to the pattern. All right, so this dry, nice air kind of really hangs around all the way into Saturday afternoon. You'll notice if you're in the mountains of West Virginia and Virginia, it's going to feel really nice Saturday afternoon. In fact, it'll probably feel a bit like fall, with temperatures only getting up into the 80s and dew points potentially not even breaking the 30-degree mark there in parts of the mountains up there. So again, definitely get out there and enjoy. You'll notice by the time we get into Sunday morning, these dew points begin to crawl back to reality for August out of the Gulf. So for us along the Gulf Coast and the southeast coastline, expect those dew points to really come back strong starting Sunday, and especially going into early next week. Everyone, unfortunately, is going to get back in on that very muggy, moist air. All right, so that's the near term. Let's talk about next week and this heat wave that is on the horizon. So as I move this ahead, this is that piece of energy that is causing some severe weather up in the northeast. That moves out by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon. And behind it, look at this red just overtake the map. This is a massive ridge, and a very strong one at that too. So again, if I can get a color that might be a little bit easier to see here, pretty much the way this is going to work is we're going to get a lot of flow around this thing, but not a lot of flow in it. So in these very dark red areas, it's going to be pretty light with winds, and it's just going to be very hot and very muggy for a lot of folks here, especially kind of in the southeast is where we'll see that muggy weather. Now, the flip side of that is, again, because we have flow around this thing, we're going to get a lot of moisture kind of getting flooded up into California, and that is what is going to bring Hurricane Hilary with it. So while we're very dry and hot here in the east, it's going to be very I guess just wet and very rainy down into the desert southwest. So definitely watching out for that by the time we get into early next week. And this ridge is likely going to hang on for a while. You'll notice this is out to next Wednesday or Thursday, still that ridge hanging on. Now, what we will have to watch out for and kind of hope for are the signs that maybe that ridge gets beaten down a little bit and pushed back out west by the time we get into later next week, which could open the door for some cooler air and maybe even some moisture going into late next week through the northeast especially, but maybe even a little bit further west from there. We will see. But right now, I think the greatest chance of seeing that break from this ridge would be in the northeastern United States going into late next week. So what does this mean in terms of temperatures? Well, this is going to be part of the video that you might not want to hear, but unfortunately, it's just the truth. Going into early next week, it is going to be hot, and it is going to be ridiculously hot, quite honestly. This is really just not going to be fun, especially if you're out here towards like Nebraska, Kansas, up near 20, maybe even 25 degrees above what you should be this time of year. Looks pretty likely for our Tuesday, our Wednesday, and our Thursday. So that's really going to be the peak of this thing into the early and middle parts of next week. And again, that's going to stretch all the way down into the Carolinas and Virginia. So a big section of the country getting in on very hot weather and unfortunately very dry weather, at least in terms of the chance of rainfall. So we're already dealing with some drought conditions out here, and I didn't show this map yesterday, but I think it's important to really show you another reason why this is so important. We have a lot of drought concerns already out here for a lot of places out here into Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa. It's already been quite dry, and once you put this massive ridge on top of that, that's only going to make things worse. So again, really just not good, and you can see that that problem is going to only get worse when we look at our weekly rainfall map. And you'll notice there's really about 1,000-mile stretch here that you could drive through next week without seeing a drop of rainfall from Nebraska all the way to kind of the Carolina coastline. So again, it's going to be very dry, and you look at this map and it just screams massive ridge in the summertime. As well, again, going to get that clockwise flow around it, which could help to bring some precipitation on the edge of this thing. But if you're under it, which unfortunately a lot of us are going to be, it's just going to be bone dry. So again, definitely kind of worried about those wildfire concerns as well as those drought concerns, and of course, just how dangerous the heat is itself. So really got to stay hydrated next week. All right, so that's kind of the heat stuff that we're worried about. Let's go ahead and switch gears to the tropics because it is August after all, and this is probably the part of the video you're going to be a little bit more interested in hearing about than just the fact it's going to be super hot and dry. So we'll start in the Pacific because this is the current largest threat to the continental United States, at least direct threat, and this is Hurricane Hilary. So Hurricane Hilary is a major hurricane right now, churning away here off the coast of Mexico, as depicted by that little X on your map. And it is expected to move up towards Baja California and eventually California itself by the time we get into overnight Sunday and into the early morning hours of Monday. So again, this is going to be quite a historic time. We haven't had a landfalling tropical system in California, I believe, since 1939. So this might not technically make landfall in California. It could very well make landfall in Baja California here and then move up. But either way, the impacts are going to be the same, and it will still be quite an historical thing to see. Again, expected to be a tropical storm by the time it gets to Southern California. But I really wouldn't be too worried about the winds here. It's more of the rain that we're going to have to worry about. But taking a look at those wind probabilities, we do have about a 30 to 40% shot of seeing tropical storm force winds down here into extreme south western California there. So really in the San Diego area has the best chance of seeing those tropical storm force winds. But again, the bigger threat here will be the rain. We have a high risk of flash flooding here for places between Yuma and San Diego there along the I-10 corridor. And that's even going to stretch up kind of about as far as the latitude of Los Angeles. So again, big rain threat there, and even the slight and moderate risk really encompasses a big section of the desert Southwest from Cedar City, Utah, over towards Eli and Tonopah and Reno, even back down towards Fresno, Bakersfield, and Santa Maria. So a lot of very big population areas out here that could be dealing with flash flooding. And of course, this is one of those places in the country you like to see rain, but unfortunately, you don't want to see it this quick. And just the way that desert soil works, it does not soak up water very well. So the second that water hits it, and if it comes down hard and heavy like it will, it is immediately going to flood things out. So if you live in a flood-prone area, you have to have a way to get those warnings as this thing moves ashore starting early next week. Another kind of interesting thing here, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, we could have a severe weather threat with this thing. So going ahead here and looking at our outlook for Sunday, we have a marginal risk of severe weather for Southern California and southwestern Arizona here. And this could include a couple tornadoes, as crazy as that sounds. Could see a couple desert tornadoes out here. So again, pretty interesting stuff, but major population areas like San Diego and Las Vegas, as well as back towards Yuma, in this threat for some severe weather on our Sunday as Hilary begins to kind of think about making landfall overnight Sunday. All right, so that's Pacific, obviously big threat out there. What about the Atlantic? Because I know I got a lot of viewers out on this side of the country, including myself. Things, to be quite honest with you, went from 0 to 100 really quick out here in the Atlantic. Now, I don't want you to freak out too much of this map because there's a lot of uncertainty that we have, and there's a very large chance that all of this could not impact the United States at all, at least except for this Gulf area. No matter what, that's going to impact us. But the good news is, no matter what, we have time to watch these and see exactly what they are going to do. So let's go ahead and break this down for you. I'm going to go ahead and label all of these certain numbers just so I can talk about them a little bit one-on-one. So Area 1 out here, this is getting ready to cross the Bahamas and will kind of cross the Keys before getting into the Gulf early next week. Now, there is some wind shear and some dry air in the Gulf, but the waters are just so warm here that we have to watch this thing with both eyes. And we've seen it plenty of times the past couple of years. Things that we don't necessarily expect to get all that strong out here in the Gulf end up going from 0 to 100 really overnight. So we've got to watch this with both eyes. Models aren't too excited about it right now, but the European model has been a bit more bullish on it and has the idea that it could form into a tropical system and impact southern Texas. So definitely have to watch that. All right, Area 2 out here, this is the next area that I'd say the models kind of have the biggest threat to the United States on. Right now, this is still way out in the middle of the Atlantic, but conditions could become favorable for this to develop as it gets out near kind of the Antilles and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Now, this could form out here, but will likely eventually end up kind of out into this section of the ocean somewhere north of Puerto Rico and and east of the Bahamas there. So once it gets there, that's when we kind of get some question marks, and it could do something like this, it could do something like this, it could do something like this. We just really don't know quite yet. Now, as for Area 3 over here, kind of more of the same, has the chance to develop, could end up somewhere out here. As for what it would do after that, we don't really know. And then Area 4, I think right now, obviously, the National Hurricane Center has the highest chance of developing, but the good news with this one is it's the furthest out and likely has the highest chance of recurving out to sea. So right now, I really got my eyes mostly on this area and this area. Luckily, these are the two that have the lowest chance of development, but if they do, we really got to keep an eye on them as they move on towards the continental United States. All right, so moving this ahead into time, this is our European model run from overnight, and you'll notice, let me actually move this ahead a little bit more into our, we'll go Monday afternoon here. So Monday afternoon, we could be dealing with, again, this is Area 1 in the Gulf. Have to watch that one as that nears Texas. This is Area 2. By the time we get to Monday, would be in the Caribbean. Really have to watch that. And then this is Area 3 and 4, still way out in the Atlantic, although having the chance to develop. Now, as we bring this out into kind of the middle of next week, you'll notice the European model gets really close to kind of developing this one near Texas. Definitely watching that. Really already has a tropical storm out here in the Caribbean, and then also has still, you know, tropical waves or weak tropical storms out here in the Atlantic with Area 3 and 4. Now, as we move this even further out into next week, you'll notice it really deepens this Caribbean wave, and that's why I'm a bit concerned about this one, just because of how warm the ocean is out here. And again, things go from 0 to 100 really quick in this part of the ocean, so we have to watch that as that again moves towards the continental United States, but eventually would likely find its way here near the Bahamas, and what happens after that would be a big question mark. European model here, although this is 7 to 10 days out, has, you know, a hurricane likely out here near the Bahamas, and of course, anytime you see that, we got to keep our eyes on it, and then still has the other areas out here in the Atlantic to watch out for, but are much lesser threats to the continental United States. All right, so that's the European model. We'll take a look at our good old friend, the GFS, as well. The GFS has been a lot less bullish with these things, which is a bit surprising because normally it's the other way around. Normally the Euro's kind of the one that says, okay, we'll hold up, and the GFS is the one that says, no, you know, pedal to the metal. So we're definitely watching this. The GFS, I'll tell you, doesn't do much with the Gulf wave. Kind of just fizzles that one out, although would, of course, bring some rain down towards southern Texas, including places like Brownsville, which, you know, would be good to see. The GFS does kind of develop wave 2 here, again, kind of near the Bahamas, getting into the middle of next week, but has it much weaker and has a much higher likelihood of it just kind of fizzling out over there and not doing much more. So, again, GFS also with wave 3 and 4 way out in the Atlantic does pretty much nothing with them. So the Euro is kind of our more bullish model right now. The GFS is a bit more relaxed with these, and you can see that as well in their ensemble. So if we look at our European ensembles, again, going into early next week, very well defined, picking up on it with the Gulf wave, the Caribbean wave, as well as the other two waves out here in the Atlantic. You know, again, European model is much more bullish on. Could bring, you know, a tropical system into southern Texas or northern Mexico there with our European ensembles. But again, the bigger threat would be early next week. What exactly happens with this wave that works into the Caribbean? Does it get near the Bahamas? Does it then get closer to the United States, or does it go out to sea? Again, just a lot of question marks right now with that. And then our GFS ensemble members, again, a little bit less bullish across the board, but still does show the idea of still something kind of out here near the Bahamas, middle of next week, and that's the one I think we really need to watch, as well as, of course, whatever gets into the Gulf early next week. And then, you know, anything after that is kind of just speculation for now. So that's what we got for you right now. Video might have been a little bit longer. I'm not quite sure. I could probably check how long it's been going. Looks like about 18 minutes. So yeah, this one's a little longer than some of my other videos, but I think it's important because, again, a lot going on out there. So it's really important to break this down for y'all. Anyway, with that said, again, I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Get out there and enjoy some of that nicer weather before things go downhill next week. But anyway, until then, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.